Dead Cells, a little game developed by Motion Twin and then later being taken over by Evil Empire Studios. This little two-dimensional side-scrolling game graced the gaming market in early August of 2018. With its charming, nostalgic, pixelated graphics and tough but fair combat, Dead Cells became the front-runner in the platforming market. With its Souls-like combat, nostalgic graphics, and a heart-pumping permadeath, it is easy to see why gamers around the world welcome Dead Cells with open arms. This being said, I think we should give it a try and see how it fares now in 2022. Hello, I'm your host, Mr.FlatFace, a man of many faces and even more varied opinions. Today I am bringing you a game review on a charming side-scroller called Dead Cells. Now many of you have probably played Dead Cells, but I personally have not. So this is going to be my first playthrough, so you'll be getting my true review and my true thoughts. With that, as you watch the review, if you find yourself enjoying your time, please consider hitting that like button. Maybe try subscribing, it is free and it helps me out a lot. And let's talk about things that we discuss in the video in the comments down below. Let's get right into it. As soon as you start up Dead Cells, you'll be greeted by a main menu with a menacing castle perched atop of an island, surrounded by water. You're going to immediately feel intrigue as to what this castle is, and you should, because it's a big, important part of the game. It's so important we should probably just break it down right now as it's a major key component in the rest of the game. The castle changes every single time you die, so no matter what you did in your past life, it's going to be a different journey this time, which is kind of nice and refreshing because every time you die, you're going to explore a new world. There will be times where it seems like there are more of a certain enemy, or maybe you find a door to the next level faster, as it is time to try to find these. This is because every time you die, the castle morphs, changing your path, enemy locations, and types. Then you add the abilities that allow you to get into secret areas, hidden passages, and shortcuts, and you will start to realize that every playthrough will be different and varied. The castle itself is literally a character that you grow to love, and for sure will grow to hate. Alright, now that we know what the castle is and what it's about and what it plays a role in this game, we can finally get into the actual gameplay. After we select our difficulty, which by the way this playthrough will be on normal, you are dropped out of a pipe as this rolling pile of guts and tissue, your grotesque pile of goop, rolls itself over to the body that is slumped over on the floor, where your tissue then attaches itself to the body and animates. Meet your character for the rest of the game. Know him, love him, be him. In what has to be the shortest tutorial in the world, you learn to jump, open doors, and interact with objects. Short and sweet as all tutorials should be. You now meet this archer lady who asks you if you are the headless fellow that's been getting around. Your character gives her the thumbs up, establishing that we do not talk. Our character does not talk. This is fine, as me, Mr.FlatFace, prefers less talking games. She then asks you how it feels to be back from the dead and informs you that you can no longer die. And with that, you are off on our adventure throughout the castle. At the beginning, the gameplay is pretty straightforward. You kind of get the sense that it's going to be a standard roguelike game where you die and just kind of keep playing until eventually you win. But you do get to pick a weapon. You get to pick a bow for range damage, or you get to pick a shield for blocking damage and close quarters combat. This choice will then be paired with your starting sword, which you get at the start of every playthrough. And that's it. You're good to go. You are now on your journey through the castle. So quick tutorial and then right into it. You can't go into Dead Cells thinking it's a joke. It is no joke. You will learn very fast in this castle that rolling to avoid enemy attacks, parrying, as well as blocking are your best friends. The Souls-like combat is tough, but fair. It can also be incredibly punishing if you are like me and think that you can just spam buttons and make your way through each level. The enemy's attacks are easy enough to learn, but a few simple mistakes can easily spell the end of your run. You can go from being super confident to feeling incredibly overwhelmed with some of the enemies in this game, spamming you with different block moves and immobilization techniques. It's no joke. It's no joke. I at the beginning I thought it was, but I learned real fast that it's not. After a few runs and deaths and starting at the beginning again, you're going to start to realize that it's not as easy as it seems. Dead Cells is not just a simple roguelike. And we do have other reviews coming where there is simple roguelikes. There's a deep system here that you need to learn and unlock, as well as kind of master if you want to go all the way. All right, let's talk about the system. The first system we should talk about really is the castle. The castle's the biggest system. We've already established that when you die, it's going to morph and it's going to change the level so every playthrough feels fresh, like a standard roguelike. What we didn't establish was the path that it makes you take. The path itself is non-linear, though at the start it seems very linear. It's kind of like a hybrid system in Dead Cells. As you go through the castle, you will finish levels. Those levels will take you to another area of the castle, that being, sewers, 2 ramparts, all the way to the clock tower. You will then unlock ruins, which will give you permanent abilities. These abilities will allow you to explore new areas and take new paths through the castle, allowing you to choose the destination you want to go. Do you want to go to the ramparts, or do you want to go to the sewers, kind of thing? Do you want to go to the village, or do you want to go to the clock tower, kind of? You get what I'm saying? You get to kind of pick where you go, which is super nice in a roguelike. The second system I want to talk about is the gear system. Gear in Dead Cells is not as simple as just a simple sword and a simple shield and just only damage. There's stats with this. You got your standard DPS, but you also got status effects that can cause bleed and poisoning. Wrapping it up, you also have substats, which will be like cause burn or burn the ground, or maybe it can even be, douse enemies with a flammable oil. You will learn very fast that the gear you choose will have a significant effect on how well or poorly you do your run. If you want to be fast, picking up a broadsword probably is not your best option, as it swings slowly and takes longer to allow you to move after starting the action. Basically, if you want to be fast, you got to pick lighter weapons. If you want to be a tank, then build a tank. You got to actually pay attention to the build that you're building to complete this game. All right, I got 2 more systems to talk about, so bear with me here. I want to talk about is the mutations. Mutations modify and increase the abilities of the player. You get to pick 3 of these every run. Let's be honest, it's kind of only 2, because if you don't pick the one of them, it just locks off later. You will start with very generic mutations that give you a small benefit, like attacks after being hurt do 10% more damage kind of thing. Now, I'm no pro, but the one you should probably pick first as a new player is this one. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. It's right here on screen. This one allows you to be resurrected in a game 1 time at 25% health. I think you will find this one useful in the earlier parts of the game, but it's kind of frustrating that you have to pick this one first, which is kind of a throwaway pick for another one later. But to each his own, it is your playthrough and your build. Remember that as we talk about this review. All right, the last system I want to talk about is the scroll system. These are power-ups hidden around the map in containers or obtained from killing elite enemies. Scrolls allow you to upgrade one of the 3 perks, while simultaneously increasing your health by a percentage. The 3 perks are survival, brutality, and tactics. These are double-edged swords, as both help you and hurt you. As you pick them up, sure, you get stronger and you get more health, but so do the enemies. And if you level up one too much, like let's say you leveled up brutality too much, then you will suffer in the other 2, causing you to have issues later in your run. Use these scrolls wisely and use them to benefit your build rather than putting them wherever. Don't just go with tactics if you really are just kind of going for a tank build. You're going to need damage then. You get what I'm saying? Build your build, not just spam whatever had the most health option. Now, these are the systems I wanted to talk about as a new player. These are the 4 that I noticed. But then you also have the overwhelming sense of exploration tied in with this. So we should probably talk about that. What do you think? The best way to describe the exploration in Dead Cells is a tiny home. On the outside, it looks so small. It's on a trailer. It's maybe 10 meters long, right? But then when you go inside, it's got 2 bunk rooms and it's got a big kitchen and a full bathroom. And you're like, how did all this fit into such a tiny package? That's exactly what Dead Cells is. When you first start the game, your path is pretty well defined. Get to the door, go through it, boom, next level. But this is only true for a little while, because after you start collecting ruins that give you permanent abilities like break through the floor or use the totem of teleportation, you start to see how vast this castle truly can be and how much there is actually to explore. And then you go from different areas. You can go from the prison cells to the ancient sewers and then back to ramparts, with each area sporting its own enemy type and its own difficulties. The sewers are rat-infested and poisonous dumps, where the High Peak Castle is this posh, glamorous, great halls with beautiful artwork on the wall and giants walking everywhere. Throughout your exploration, you will also find keepers and bosses. Now we should get into that, because the boss fights in this game are really good. Bosses are much harder enemies, sporting much higher health and even more damage, with uniquely challenging abilities. The first boss you'll be greeted with is the Concierge. With his daunting size and overwhelming abilities, a new player like myself will start to feel a little overwhelmed. But with practice, you will learn to overcome these bosses, be able to take on even more challenging bosses. We can't take for granted how important your gear is when you're fighting these bosses and keepers. Your gear, mutations, and status effects all play a massive role in your boss fights. Choose your wrong gear or choose the wrong mutation and suffer the consequences. Trust me, I know. Upon killing the boss, you are immediately rewarded with a loot shower, a literal explosion of goodies. This is fantastic in a roguelike game because it gives you immediate gratification that all that grinding was worth it. All that starting over was worth it. Remember, this is a permadeath game, which means when you died on your way to this boss, you had to start at the very beginning again. So it gives you that sense of like, I did it, and you do feel a little bit stronger, and you get to have that moment where you get to pick through and figure out if you're going to change your build or continue with what you got. It's a fantastic mechanic, and more roguelike games really should do this. On top of the bosses in the game and the keepers, you also, as you explore, will see elites. These are harder version of enemies you've already seen. They just offer you a bigger reward. You can get blueprints or upgrades or even scrolls that will help upgrade your character. I don't really see a downside to fighting these guys. Like, it is a permadeath game, so I guess if you're trying to just go for the end, then maybe avoid them. But I think it's a worthy shot. I definitely say go for it, because you're going to die and start over anyway, so you might as well die trying to make yourself stronger so you don't die now and you die later. It's a weird world we live in, but that's the world we chose. There's tons of bosses to find within Dead Cells. You can go from the tall knight to a weird triangle octopus thing. Defeating these bosses can be extremely frustrating when you have come so far in a run, only to die to some sort of spam attack that you've never seen before. To say this is frustrating is putting it easy, to be honest, because it can make you literally want to never play the game again. Dead Cells can be an absolutely incredibly fun game, but on the flip side of that same coin, it can also be one of the most hair-pulling experiences of your life. For one brief minute, I want to reference a game known as Elden Ring. Though graphically different, they share some common mechanics. One of these being the get good mentality. Getting good is a fair statement when you have the abilities to get good. Elden Ring does this perfectly by allowing you to challenge a boss without a lot of run back time, without a lot of working your way all the way back. You die and you just kind of spawn a little bit outside the room, go back in, try again. So you can really get a reference to how to fight this boss or learn its mechanics. In Dead Cells, you don't get that option. When you die in Dead Cells, you go back to the beginning, and it could be another hour before you get to see that boss again, and you might have already forgotten those mechanics. It's super frustrating that to get to the final boss, you have to go through every single level every single time and try to fight the Hand of the King. Die and have to start from the very beginning. You can make it all the way to the very end of the game, only to start at the beginning. It's a very frustrating mechanic in these roguelike style games, but as well as the same reason you keep doing it. It's the challenge as well as the bane of your existence. It's such a weird world we live in, where we will punish ourselves just to beat a digital person in a game who is clearly better than us in every single way. Here's going to be where the review kind of seems nitpicky. As a new player, this is incredibly frustrating when it just took you 45 minutes to explore every level, fight every enemy, only to die to have to start from the very beginning. As a person that wants to find that hidden room or the new path, you're going to just start to feel like it doesn't matter. As a roguelike style game, you expect this, but you also feel like other roguelike games give you such a better sense of progression. Like Neon Abyss, for example. When you die in Neon Abyss, you feel like you are making progress, like you've gotten stronger. In Dead Cells, all sense of power is stripped away from you upon death, and you simply just restart. What increases the frustration is a lot of the enemies can both shoot and or hang out in non-playable areas. When an Inquisitor is taking a pop shots from 2 floors down and making your fight even harder, or when a bat hangs out in a non-playable area dive bombing you, you start to feel cheated, like the odds are against you. Now this happens fairly rarely, but when it does, that decides the fate of your run, and you can sometimes find it hard to continue when you just got spam attacked by a bat that hanged out in an area where you couldn't fight it. Though when you conquer these foes, you do get that sense of self-gratification and pride. It's a weird mechanic where in roguelites, they just kind of make it so you die and you restart and you want to keep grinding, but at the same time, that same feeling can be the reason why you stop grinding. You want a sense of progression, and that's where I do think Dead Cells lacks. The progression is incredibly slow, and it takes a long time to actually get that sense of feeling stronger, and it can also solely be based off of the loot that you find in the game. Your playstyle will fit certain gear better than other gear. So when you find all the gear in the level only is for the opposite of your playstyle. You have to learn to adapt, which can also make it frustrating that you're trying to learn a new way to play in the middle of your run. It's a weird mechanic, but it's why we hate and love roguelike games, isn't it? All right, so now the way that the reviews are going to work on the Mr.FlatFace channel is we're going to play a game until completion, or until we have a deep understanding of the game mechanics, probably 8 to 10 hours plus. Then Mr.FlatFace, that being me, will provide you, the viewer, a no-spoiler review on a scale of 1 to 10. Unless it's a super old game, and if you haven't played it in 20 years, then you're just going to get the spoilers. All right? All right. Let's go. Dead Cells is an absolute treat to play, and a great modern making of a nostalgic feeling. Though tough in combat, the combat is fair and will greatly reward you with both loot showers as well as a physical feeling of both pride and accomplishment. In the review, we played the base game to the final boss, the Hand of the King. We did not delve into the New Game Plus modes. We also did not play the DLCs, as I would like to do the DLCs in their own video. With all that being said, I would like to give Dead Cells a resounding 7 out of 10. Dead Cells is a fantastic game, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who enjoys roguelike games. With nostalgic feelings, Super Nintendo graphics, this is a good little game. It's a treat. You will not go wrong, and you will not feel bad about your investment. For the first review on the channel, I think this is a great start. Another big plus for Dead Cells is no microtransactions to get ahead of or intrude in your gaming experience. So go out and try it for yourselves. It's on all platforms, and it's also on Game Pass, so if you have that, enjoy your time with this little gem. It is not going to stir you wrong. I had a great time, and I hope you do as well. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the review of Dead Cells as much as I enjoyed playing it. I have been your host, Mr.FlatFace, the man of many faces and even more opinions. If you enjoyed the content, then please leave me a like as well as consider subscribing, as it helps me out a lot. Also, have you played Dead Cells? If so, let me know in the comments below. Until next time, I have a face to paint, because I didn't put mine on this morning. Bye.